right to privacy is a constitutional guarantee. Enforcement, however, of this right is another question. There may be some circumstances or unique occurrences that may limit this right to privacy in some spaces. Today on Law Express, we discuss privacy in public places. My name is Noella Seidu. Thanks for joining us here. We'll go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, you get to meet my co-panelists on this discussion. Don't go away. This is Law Express.
Courage A. Asabagna is a private legal practitioner whose interests go beyond the law. When he's not working, he enjoys watching football and listening to all kinds of music. Is a private legal practitioner who finds relaxation and enjoyment in activities outside of his professional life. His hobbies include playing chess and exploring new destinations through travel. Noella Seidu. She's a private legal practitioner and a consistent member of our 3-lawyer panel on the show every week. She also doubles as the host of the show. She likes to play tennis and read.
The conversation on privacy for us in Ghana actually starts with, of course, as with all laws, with our constitution. I think the baseline is set really in Article 18, which guarantees the right that no person's privacy of either home or communication or property shall be subject to interference. So the conversations of privacy really starts with saying that Article 18 guarantees it as a human right for all of us. Now the question, as your intro says, how that is really enforced can be nuanced in various forms. Yeah. So one interesting case I came across in this conversation is the popular Naomi Campbell. And so a photographer followed her and took pictures of her to the effect that it disclosed that she was going through a rehab for a drug process. Now the question, she sued the guy, and the question really was whether or not taking photography of such a person should be considered a breach of her privacy. The baseline, and there are different, I'm sure in the conversation we would unpack different, how the court or how the law typically unfolds to balance a part which is a freedom of expression, which in many sense would come to privacy where somebody is reporting somebody about something they consider either newsworthy or they consider something that is worth reporting. Yeah. So it's a question of balancing two principles, one of the individual privacy on one side, and on the other side, a question of whether or not the expression of the other should be curtailed.
Just to take the conversation further, I think he has laid the foundation of what we are discussing, but there's a key question that we should be looking at, the question of what is privacy and what will you regard as a public place or a public space. Now, if you say I have a right to privacy, what does it mean? Typically, one will say it has to do with somebody having access to undocumented personal information of you, of which you didn't consent to. So if I have my pictures already online and somebody picks those pictures, I can't make mention of an issue of privacy. So when you move from there and you look at the question of what is a public space, now you can have what we call an open public space and an open private space. And this will determine whether you have a right to privacy, because there's this underlining point that is being used by the court, whether there's a reasonable expectation of what? Privacy, if I find myself in a public space. So if I'm in an open public space, let's say a church, or I go to a restaurant,
Or a mall.
or if I go to an open private space, so I go to, let's say, a club, and they have a VIP session. So I decide to go into the VIP session and pay.
Ward.
Or the hospital ward. Is there some reasonable expectation of what? Privacy. So the question has been, if from the facts, if it is clear that the person wants to have some seclusion, wants to be excluded, then it means that that person has some expectation of what? Reasonable what? Privacy. But what is interesting is that there's another layer of the discussion, which is, does it matter who is involved?
Yeah.
So if I'm an actor, or I'm a politician, or I'm a musician, is it the same sense of expectation or standard that I need or I require compared to an ordinary person?
I like to say like a private citizen, not an ordinary person.
Okay, a private citizen,
Yeah.
like myself.
An everyday person.
Yes, an everyday person. So the discussion is always around
It's
that.
nuanced.
Yes, it's
along different tiers.
Exactly. So the courts have over the years struggled in a way to have a clear-cut standard in determining that. So if you look at the cases like what he mentioned, Naomi's Campbell's case, that was one that the court took a different opinion that, look, her right wasn't violated.
I mean, I look at, in simple terms, privacy as the right to be left alone or to be let alone. And everybody has that right. But since we already started this conversation along the lines of public figures, you have invited the public into your life, okay? And they have a right to know what happens, how whatever you introduce to them is evolving over time. So you can be a public figure, but limit what people know about you, such that it is along a professional line or along some talent you have, where you're a musician, but you've managed to keep some parameters of your popularity along just your career. You don't discuss your family, you don't post your family, and so they deserve that privacy. So if, on the other hand, you are quick to post your family every time, you are on stage with your family every time, you can turn around to insist that you deserve privacy from the curiosity of the public in getting to know how these people have evolved over time.
In many instances, children are almost always deemed to be excluded.
Children are off limits until you invite the
But
public. It depends on what kind of child. If you have a child mathematicians, like in the case of Sidus, and then this person is a whiz who is on TV doing competitions, you have opened that child's life and presented the child to the public in a way that they now have a vested interest by way of curiosity as to how that child is evolving. Because that child becomes a public figure, there are other kids looking up to that child. And you can now all of a sudden draw the curtains.
I think I get the angle that you're coming from. Even with the issue of whether you're a public figure or otherwise, the question has also always been whether, even if you're a public figure, do you still have a right to privacy? Now, even with you being a public figure, there's an issue of you being a public figure by virtue of you being in an official position, which is different from somebody who is a public figure, not by reason of being in
Public office.
a public office.
Some people are public figures by accident.
Yes.
Something happens with social media now. It blows up and you didn't ask for it.
So if somebody is even a public figure and goes to, let's say, go to an open private place and you happen to be there, it is clear that the person wants to have a private life. So even if you proceed to violate the privacy right of that person, it will be deemed to be a violation. So you can't say because he's a public person, every step of his private life must be documented.
Absolutely.
You see, but if the person is an official, and by reason of that is in an official position, the question will be, where do you draw the line between his private life and him being what? A public figure. What is interesting is we find instances whereby somebody is making a video, right? And you end up in the
Captured
video.
in the background as an extra.
Yes. How do you determine that? So you're making a video and by mistake I walk past or behind you. The courts have always looked at whether that person was your principal focus.
Yeah.
If that person was your principal focus, the next step would then be whether the person being in that public space, was there a reasonable expectation of what? Privacy. So if you go to a place that they are playing music and dancing and everybody's having fun, and somebody is making a video, you can't be here to say that you were expecting that you have a private life within such setting. Because the person can make a video and now come and go around to look at, okay, I don't know this person, let me edit and all that. And this whole discussion has to do with how do you keep a balance? The freedom of expression. Do I have a right to express myself by making a video wherever I find myself?
With my own phone.
With your own phone. And again, how then do we balance the interest or the right of another person whose picture or in some way finds himself in your video? How do you keep that balance? And that has been the difficulty with the court over the years.
But there's one fundamental thing in this conversation of privacy, and that is consent. So the person is in a public private space, restaurant. It's an official or a public figure. You want to take a photograph of this person. The moment that person admits you into that space and agrees, then there's no problem. The challenge is where you are taking photos without a person's consent in a place that you reasonably expect this person to want to be left alone.
I think if I can just step back to what you said.
Yeah.
You see, there are two layers of that issue. So you want to take a picture of a public figure, you walk up to him.
To ask.
Oh, you proceed.
Yeah.
So obtaining the picture, there's no breach.
Yes.
But you haven't informed him that you are going to post.
Okay, so you're looking at
the
beyond the capturing
beyond
of the photos. Yes.
That is another level of.
Actually, a whole world of it.
Yes. Because what did he consent to? Did he consent to you taking a picture and going to
blow it up everywhere?
Blow it up.
With some texts, perhaps.
Exactly.
Which could be misleading.
Exactly. Or then, you see, it even goes where you use it for a commercial purpose.
Absolutely. That's a whole different conversation.
And that one becomes a personal image right issue.
I think we've been looking at this conversation in the space of public figures and all of that. Let's bring it down to the everyday person. You and I. Okay? Privacy, what is the expectation of privacy in a public place? I'm a private citizen, I go to buy my porridge. Am I, allowed to have some peace and quiet, some solitude in the activity that I'm embarking on at that given moment? In public transportation? Yeah.
I think it goes back to the point that I started with. The question is, if you go to buy your porridge and you're going and I make a video of you, are you the principal focus of that video? If it is established that you are the principal focus of that video, then it goes without saying that you've breached that person's what? Right.
Yes.
But the issue is, if the person is with others, you find yourself with others.
You're in a group. Maybe you're in the watcher queue.
Yes. And a video is made. That is where we have to then determine whether you being in that group, there was reasonable expectation of privacy. You see. And what makes it more interesting is if you are in a group that you share the same interest. So you are 10 people, you go somewhere to have a party, and one of them decides to make a video.
Yeah.
And publish it.
That video he's making for his own use based on his interaction with you.
Yes. And he
Yeah.
makes a video and decides to publish it. Would that amount to a breach of your right
Somebody
to
would
privacy?
say you would need the consent of all the people
Yes, but
in the video.
here you can see that the court takes, you see, they look at it to say that you are in a group of the same interest. And once you are with them, it's reasonable that you do everything, not everything, but everything together at that point. So you're having fun and they make a video. They don't need to come and ask you whether you agree to them making the video, because already you are sharing the same interest to come out and and have fun. Or you are going to play football. Already there is that common interest that, oh, we are playing football and we sometimes video the game. You see, so it depends. It's not a straightforward answer.
That's what I was just going to say.
Exactly, it's not a straightforward answer. It depends on the facts of each case.
And whether you agreed not to have videos taken at that particular event. Because if you had the opportunity to moderate that and you did not, then you can come back to insist that somebody shouldn't have a right to publish any aspect of their lives that they engaged in by virtue of your being there when you didn't expressly say that, look, for this particular activity, don't try to add me to your coverage. We'll go for a quick commercial break. This is Law Express. Don't go away. We'll be right back. So before we went on the break, I was trying to bring the conversation to circumstances where you're in a public space, like you're in a queue at a mall trying to purchase something. How far is the person behind you supposed to stay from your, away from your body
Right.
or your person?
Right.
So is it relative to what is happening in that struggle to board the trotro? If somebody is making bodily contact with you, can that be a breach of your privacy in a public space?
The subject matter is almost always a question. What is the nature of the breach we're talking about? And I think that usually, if it's aggravated towards sexuality, it makes sense, or in my mind, the court has almost always tended in a way to protect people's intimacy. There are also questions around the relationship between the parties or the purpose. Why am I in a queue? If we're all in a queue and we know that the car is only one and we're all forcing to.
Yeah.
I mean, in my mind,
It's reasonably expected.
it goes, there's a reasonable expectation that we are all trying to get a car.
In that context, though, there's an implied consent that there will be that contact.
Yes.
It has to be reasonable contact, not a contact in the manner that is to cause harm to the other person or may end up causing
Violate
harm.
the person,
Violate the
perhaps,
person's
yeah.
right. But what I want us to look at, the conversation has been on video and all that, but there's another aspect of it, a text or a phone call.
Yeah.
So I see you at the restaurant, I pick a phone and I call somebody. Oh, she's here. She's here. She's sitting down here eating.
Running commentary
Yes.
about your every move.
With maybe she's not here alone too, so.
Exactly. Is that a breach of privacy? Somebody has just picked a phone or sent a text that, look, there's someone here. Or goes on social media and just write, oh, I have seen her at social, this place. Then put some words around it and somebody can get the sense that it is you that the person is referring to. Would that amount to a breach of what? Your privacy in a public space? And the conversation still has been around the same angle, that you being there, are you at a place that you don't expect anyone to see you? So if you're at a private beach, the conversation is different from you go to Labadi Beach. So somebody says, I've seen her at Labadi Beach. You can't be at Labadi Beach and feel that you're hiding. It's not possible. So it depends on the facts of each case and order.
Yeah, and the facts, like we said, are in different tiers.
Yeah,
Who
right.
you are, what you're doing,
The location.
and location,
Yeah.
and how you're even being captured.
Yeah.
Who is capturing you, and the person's connection to you at that moment in time.
Yeah.
You know, if you're with the person and you're having dinner, he takes a photo and decides to post it, well, there's some implication that you were comfortable with this arrangement.
Yeah.
Must you be warned when you go into a public space that there are cameras here recording your every move?
Yeah. They are required to.
Such that if you do not have that notice, then there's an invasion of your privacy.
That would be a very difficult
Because we are looking at the national interest as well.
Yeah.
I see cameras up on our streets these days.
Yeah.
You are in your car and you expect some level of privacy in your car. But we all know that because of how cars are built,
Yes.
if there's a camera overhead, it can capture you and whatever you're doing in your car.
Yes.
Here's a case where I don't see any notification anywhere, no announcement anywhere.
That would be very difficult to do, because again, it's an issue of public interest. It's an issue of balancing the interest. There's a
Why
reason
is that difficult? We
Because-
have road signs. You can put a sign there
Yeah,
with a
because
camera showing that yes.
For you to say the failure to notify you amounts to a violation of your right, there's a reason why there's that camera there. Public interest.
Yeah.
So how do we balance the interest of the state so far as security is concerned and your interest? So the question then is, when they obtain that, are they going to use it in a manner that will violate your right? Others will argue that, look, we shouldn't even be talking about the question of how they are going to use it.
Yeah.
It's the question of how
How
it is
it's being
obtained.
exactly.
And that one becomes what? An issue of what? A breach of your right to privacy.
We all know that by the operation of our law and the Constitution as it is now, the public interest always wins
Yeah.
in this debate about our individual rights and human rights generally. But once again, should there not be a balance that I deserve that right to be notified? That as I use this road that my taxes have built, okay, you are not capturing me with cameras my taxes have bought again without my consent. I know you're looking at fighting crime. You're looking at public order, compliance, safety, and all of that. Yes, these are all measured things. But don't I reserve the right to know that, look, as you are out here, this is something, because is this somebody playing Big Brother over my life without my consent? Where every little thing I do is being policed, and I can't even eat in peace in my own car, in traffic.
At the very philosophical level, you've asked perhaps the most difficult question in privacy, right? Which is, to what extent must surveillance be allowed? And these are very big philosophical questions. I tell people now that assume that you don't have it now, right? Because, for example, we all use phones, and we all know, nobody has to tell you this is it's a surveillance device.
Yeah.
We're all holding.
And the phones sometimes are public spaces when you're on social media.
Absolutely. Now just have a conversation, and your next ad you're receiving
Yeah, it's around that.
is around the conversation you just had, right? And so if we branch the conversations into those, of course, those tech companies will tell you when you were downloading the T's and C's you didn't read somewhere.
Listen, you have no chance going against those terms and conditions. I mean, you just have to accept. If not, you don't get to use whatever it is.
Absolutely.
So you're
They are drafted
compelled
by
to.
brilliant men like
You're compelled to accept them if you want to use those
you
services.
know. Yes, but I think that, as I'm saying, the difficulty really is that at a philosophical level, a journey towards democracy, in its sense, is a refuting of privacy as an individual.
Yeah.
Right. If the ends of social media, the ends of technology, is to share, right, and such that self-expression and metadata and keeping record is at the minute level, then in that pursuit of a democratized world of information, of persons, of record. The fight for privacy seems to be losing. However, I think that is where conversations like this become extremely important. So one thing I always tell people is that take your phone, for example, go to your setting. You have a right to opt out.
Yeah.
You have a right to opt out from even Google.
At what expense?
Well, it's a choice.
You do not get a full, complete experience.
So that's a choice then you are making.
Yeah.
To say that, they would say that in order to have access, to give you your geolocation, to know where I'm coming to.
Then they need to know.
They need to know.
Track you.
Absolutely. But if I choose to opt out, it means that I'll probably have to call you and say,
direct me to where you are.
You know,
so you can use the location
so that
service.
Opting out, and I think our data privacy law in Ghana, data protection law in Ghana, in many essence speaks to consent, right? And the right to know what is being held about you. In those sense, you then choose. So as you're saying, public cameras, to the ends of public good, I don't see you winning in any court. But I think that it also makes sense for good policy to say that you're being surveilled here.
Yeah, just notice.
Just so that I can opt out.
Yeah.
But in that sense, the question is then it would defeat the security ends. If I tell you there's a camera here, you probably will steal and pass the other way. You know, so to the ends of security, and in many sense, national security is a reason for excusing many laws. You know,
anyway,
so those are the balance.
We sampled people's opinion on this topic.
Right.
Let's take a listen and give our feedback on that.
Should people have privacy in public places? Yes, of course, they should. People have particular things that they do which they do not want to come out into the public. For instance, in the market space, when somebody is using their phone and everybody wants to know what they are doing on their phones, that is not right. People should have their privacy in public places.
I believe there should be privacy in public places because, one, I may have certain things which I'm doing on my phone and then a fellow want to glance through whatever that is going on my phone, which is not right. So I believe we should all respect each other's privacy.
Okay, so I don't see it's very relevant to have your privacy in a public space. They expect to be engaged with a lot of people, so there's no need for any privacy in a public space.
People are supposed to have their privacy even in a public space, but your rights must not infringe upon somebody's rights.
Should people have a right to privacy in public places? For me, I would say no, because privacy is foundational to who we are as human beings. And every day, it enables us to define ourselves, our relationship to the outside world. And since our privacy is mean to us, I don't think we should be involved in public places. Public places don't entertain privacies. So I think it's a no.
So with the first comment or opinion, you can see there is an issue of shoulder surfing, somebody trying to look into your phone by just to see what you are actually doing and all that. And that is where it becomes clear that, look, I'm using my phone. I don't have that intention to share whatever I'm doing on my phone with you. So you doing that actually amounts to you violating the person's right to privacy. But you see, this issue about phone, the Supreme Court in a way dealt with it, not that in a very subtle way, and which I find it a bit disturbing in that. As you see, in Raphael Kubaji, the Supreme Court, through Justice Puaman, he said, look, even if you receive a call and you put it on loudspeaker without the person's consent, you violated the person's right.
The person on the other
The
side.
person on the other
Yeah.
side.
So that would go to recording phone conversations.
Yes. And that has to do with the whole underlying idea behind our data protection and all that concept. But what I find disturbing with that decision is that the decision didn't look at balancing the interest of the two people. I have a right to use my phone. I can decide to put it on loudspeaker.
Maybe because I have a hearing issue.
Exactly. So if you have something confidential to say, you should be able to tell me that I have something confidential to say.
But shouldn't you also tell the person that I'm about to put you on loudspeaker?
I can't be telling somebody that I want to put my
No, I mean,
so
the
if
person,
says
no,
no,
it's about legitimate expectation. I know how the phone works, and we all know that there are two ways to use it, or
Yes.
in fact, three. You can have an earpiece
exactly,
in, you can bring it to your ear, or you can put it on loudspeaker.
exactly,
So, but we all know that the default mode of use is to bring the phone to your ear
exactly.
because it's an individual conversation.
Yes,
So if you are in a public space and then you know that there's another person that I am not aware of who is present and listening and can potentially listen to the phone call, I think you have to alert me to the fact that I'm about to put you on loudspeaker.
you see, that is where I find it very disturbing. How do we balance the various rights?
No. It's just a thing of, once again, notice. You have a right to put it on loudspeaker if that is the only way you can deal
But
with
I have
this
to
conversation.
inform you first.
Because it's my voice that you're projecting. You are not projecting your own voice. I am the one whose verbal communication is being put out on blast. It is not your side. If you are shouting from your side, you don't need to tell me, by the way, I have to be shouting
Okay.
because it's loud.
Can I trigger the conversation? So I'm in a public space. There's somebody next to me. What about I'm in a public space but I'm secluded and I can't determine at what point will somebody walk by past me.
That's a different conversation.
And I put it on a loudspeaker.
The unpredictability of that. The person walked past. The person was not seated there at the time you started. And once the person walked past, only got a part of the conversation.
Somebody could be listening in.
Yeah.
So I'm in a washroom. Somebody is
But
on the
that
other
is-
side
that
and
you did not
record.
know.
So am I expected
So-
to inform you that, look, I'm going to put it on loudspeaker?
No,
so
because you did not see the other person. Look, we shouldn't go into absurdities in this conversation.
I
You
I
can't
agree with the first
control
one.
everything.
Yes, if
You
you are in
know,
a car and you
I'm
pick it by way of a
seated with
Bluetooth,
you.
fine.
Yeah, there's Bluetooth. You have a passenger. I don't know the passenger is
Yes.
there, and I'm telling you things personal. You need to be able to protect me by telling me that, hey, by the way, so and so is in the car, or have company. Then I know how to manage my conversation, or I can elect to pick up the conversation later.
Again, does it depend who you are in, like the people you are with in the car?
Absolutely.
So maybe we are.
Absolutely.
A friend
You
has
have
called
your
and
family members.
You have 4 people. We are all
Yeah.
friends. It's the same
Yeah,
thing
but
we talk
what I
about.
want to discuss with you might not be something I
So
want them also
so
to know
you have
about.
to inform me that you want to discuss something confidential with me, so that I then proceed and say, okay,
So it's a
can we
two-way
talk later?
responsibility, right?
Hi, my name is Joy and I'm from Dansuman. I sat in a church road the other day on my way to work. I had to speak to my boyfriend, but because the vehicle was in motion and there was a preacher screaming on board, I had to speak loudly. There was a little misunderstanding during our conversation on the phone. As soon as I hung up, an elderly lady sitting behind me started giving me relationship advice. It was obvious she had been listening to my entire conversation. I told her my situation is personal, and she got angry, and everyone in the church started verbally attacking me, saying I am arrogant. Do I have a right to privacy on my phone on a bus?
I see. So my response would be a big no, because if you are in a bus and you receive a call, you decide to speak loud because of a pastor
In a
preaching
language they understand.
in a language that perhaps everybody in the bus understands. You can't argue to say that, look, you didn't expect someone to hear you. You see, but her problem is not
The hearing.
the hearing.
The invitation to advise.
The invitation to advise. Is that an invasion of what? Her privacy.
And then the other aspect,
Everybody
where
in the-
everybody
in the
believes
car,
that
yes.
she's arrogant for asking somebody to mind her business.
Right.
So as for the hearing, I'll say a big no. But the issue of the unwarranted advice on that, I'll still say no, because it is reasonable that any person in that bus will want to reach out to you to talk to you about the issue. It's a reasonable expectation that if you find
That's
yourself,
where I draw the line.
If you find yourself,
Is it
in people's-
expected in our culture?
Yes,
too?
it's something that's expected.
That's where I draw the line.
Because no matter what, somebody will be like, oh, what's the media?
You can't be man now, bread.
You see, because it's a reasonable expectation that somebody will
where
reach
I
out
draw
to
the
you
line.
to advise you.
This is how I see it, okay? First of all, in being loud on the bus, okay, joining the preacher to commit public nuisance on the bus is a problem in itself. You are now invading their right to have peace and quiet enjoyment of their journey. But beyond that, why are you giving me unsolicited advice based on a little bit of information you gleaned by reason of some privilege you had for sitting around me? Yes, you can have your own opinion in your mind. You can go and have this conversation about what you heard from my conversation in your home with whoever you want, because at that point, it's not my business. But to actively try to interrupt my life and how I live it when I haven't asked you, I think it's a bit much.
You see, again, even when it comes to issues of defamation, when the matter becomes a public matter, everyone can provide comments on the matter.
But to who?
You expressing...
No, you are allowed to comment. Assuming the question was that she is now discussing my issue with the one sitting next to
But
him.
the comment can
to
be
her,
with you.
I
I'm
would not
commenting on it
listen.
with you. Now look,
No,
this is your matter.
It's really funny
It's
because
a comment. It's a fair comment.
if the person had started that conversation, discussing my case or my issue with somebody right next to her, another passenger, like, hey, if it was you, what would you do? Listen, it would have been a situation of I brought this upon myself. But for you to be emboldened to actually tap me and try to advise me,
Because-
and especially where I tell you that, look, please stay off, I'm okay. What kind of concern do you want to show again, where now everybody makes it a mandatory, right of yours to advise me on my own life choices?
You see, I don't want to mention there's someone in Ghana here, he had an issue. He went to eat fufu somewhere. Somebody approached him and said, "Oh no, where do you see Kano?" Started advising him. And he was probably trying to see if he can bring an action against the person. You see, once there's a public matter, you make it a public matter. People can
The
express...
comment was Yesika. It means that person has a vested interest in the
Exactly.
subject matter.
But this matter has
This
become
is
public.
somebody's personal relationship. What is that person's interest in trying to
help
advise
her,
you?
help her change
Good.
her behavior.
You've showed goodwill, good faith and all, but I've told you, yes, thank you. I'm okay. Then all your supporters turn against me for telling you that it's okay, don't help me.
Okay. So my first layer is the cultural nuance, right?
Yeah.
Of course, there's, as you said, and I agree with you, she made the subject matter public, right?
Voluntarily.
Without
Because
anybody.
you could have defended the call.
Absolutely. So she made the subject matter a public conversation in a public bus, right? There's a cultural nuance around it. An elderly person who feels
Obligated and responsible.
Thank you for the choice of words. Right. Feels obligated that this is my daughter who is eating breakfast at lunch. Right. And so let me be kind to her. Right. For me, the clear intention from the cultural nuance layer is this is an elderly person reaching out. Then she rightfully says, I would rather not talk about it because it's my matter. She has absolute right to that. The question, however, is whether somebody also has a right to interpret that as arrogance is also something they are allowed to.
Yeah.
right? So you say, I don't want to talk about it. If somebody understands that to be arrogance, they also have a right to understand it.
It looks like a majority of them understood
Abs-
that to be
absolutely.
arrogance.
The problem, however, is that in the midst of this, do they have a right to attack or abuse it? I don't think
or
so.
Or try to compel you
Absolutely.
to submit yourself to this
Absolutely.
council.
In that sense, I don't think they do. But in the sequence, she made the subject matter public. I see the intention of the woman not to have caused any harm, but to further good. She exercises her right to say, I don't want to talk about this. Other people have a right to interpret it as arrogance, and she should be able to deal with that. I think that if it crossed the line where she was heckled or she was abused, then it's a completely different
That's
conversation.
a different convo. It's no longer a thing of
Yes,
privacy.
it's a completely different conversation.
Great.
But
Thank you, Noella, for this insightful show. My name is Pokua from Alaju. People behind me in public spaces, especially in vehicles, like looking at my phone screen when I send a text message or watch videos. One lady actually asked me to increase the volume on my phone so that she can watch the movie I was watching with me. Is this not an invasion of my privacy?
You have a personal space in a bus. So if you position yourself in a manner that the person seated next to you, it is very easy for the person to know what is going on your phone. It's a clear invitation.
Listen, no, I would never agree
because
with
you don't expect me to sit straight and not
Watching my
even
front.
turn because you are on your phone.
So do you
if
expect me to put my phone under my legs
No, so
to be able to text people?
exactly. So that is the balancing of the interest.
Listen, you can snoop, okay?
No, I am
snoop
not.
all you want.
No,
Why
I'm not
are you
doing
asking
that.
me to increase the value
Yeah,
of my thing?
that's a second aspect of it. But if I decide to hold this way,
Yeah.
and I'm reading,
and I'm like, he should not read.
No, you turned it.
Like, you decide to hold it this way, and you're like, he shouldn't read.
Yeah, he shouldn't read.
And if it's like,
he should
please,
mind his business.
can you explain the third paragraph?
Okay, what word is that?
absolutely.
So it's more like, you see, your
But think about it this way. You're a big man, so you have your private car. And you think that all cars or vehicles are arranged that way. Some structures are in layers, okay? Somebody is likely to be hanging over you.
Yes.
Have you seen the circle Kaneshi structures?
Yes.
The old ones?
yes.
At some point, there's a step down, okay? So once you're seated there, the one behind you who is a bit elevated,
It's overlooking.
there's nothing you can do
Yeah,
in
so
this
it is not
circumstance.
his fault either.
Good. But then, where I'm now watching my movie,
Yes.
this is not a TV affixed to the to the
Yeah,
vehicle.
and it's like, oh,
that
can you
you
send
have-
that movie to me? You have exposed it to him.
Send that movie to me.
It's a request.
It's
You
even
can say no.
better. Okay, because now, but then I'll have to take your number, collect it, save it to send you the movie. It's an indirect way of saying, can I have your contact?
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about, telling me to increase the volume for you to join in the movie, it means that by that singular act, what I'm saying is I've consented. So now I'm required to raise it higher so that you can have unfettered access to my screen. So if now, while watching it together, there's a pop-up of a text message, you can now expect that I shouldn't have read that as well, regardless of the content.
You can't leave the book saying I'm reading, but the person sitting next to you should confine their neck in a way that it doesn't see that. There are two balancing
I'll
principles.
bring a very personal story now here, which I usually don't do, but because for the sake of the conversation. Years ago, when I was a student, I was traveling on a public vehicle. And you know, every Saturday morning, Alaji and Alaji was, this is the show I never wanted to miss. So I had, you know, when cell phones evolved and you could have the radio inbuilt. So I opted for my Nokia, which had that. So I put in my earpieces and I was listening to this thing. And there was this gentleman sitting by me who wanted to start a conversation. So I was like, oh no, I just want to. And he got offended. Then everybody joined in. Oh, Onusoye Nipa. How can you say you don't want to talk to Yeninai and Sekri? You know, it was, now I've had to unpack my little tree. it was so inconveniencing, but it became a conversation for everybody as to why you should not want to indulge somebody who just wants to talk to you and the person is not harming you. And this was a simple thing of privacy. I just wanted to be left alone to enjoy a program I wanted to. Now, you want to have a chat. I don't want to chat, but in insisting on my right, based on the cultural setting, it becomes something that shows that you're arrogant. That even brings me to the question of the pastor preaching on a church, screaming, you know, I want to be left alone, maybe to have a nap. At what point is he invading on your privacy and your right to enjoy this vehicle that you've paid for, you know, for that journey, for those minutes?
Yeah. But is there an ordinary way of them doing things?
Did you expect that he'll be on the vehicle? He's likely to be on the vehicle.
But did you expect that? Was it reasonable, expected of you that they will have a pastor, or they do have pastors who come on board to what?
You can never know. You know, it's not like it's a standard where every church has a resident pastor preaching.
Okay, but it becomes very difficult and begging for me to say that you are in a church where you want absolute privacy.
No, but you're looking at reasonable noise. So you know that hawkers will be there. You know that other people in the natural interaction on the church would ask you to shift. People would, there'll be those things.
I like
but
that statement, reasonable noise.
Yeah.
Is it reasonable that pastors will scream?
That is a conversation for another day. I don't want to get into problems, okay?
While
so
preaching.
let's go back to let's go to the third question, okay?
Hello, Noella. My name is Nana Kojo from East Legon. I need your views on this. So I asked the lady to leave more space between her and me in a Wachi queue, and she got angry. I felt she was too close to me, as I could feel her breathing down my neck. Was I wrong?
Once again, it depends. Moment, eh?
So when I watch a queue, maybe she feels that it's getting finished, so she wants to stretch and check, and then you feel she's breathing down your neck.
Is she allowed to breathe?
Of course.
I think baseline. All these conversations, what it brings is that your right for protection of the privacy should not at any point in time seek to suggest somebody should not have a right to express themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
What is this expression?
Am I not entitled to where I stand?
Here
all of us are in
there's nothing in the facts that suggests that it was a brief moment to check if the watcher is finished or not.
Yeah.
I do not think that anybody will complain
but
if you just stretch over to check something and you move back.
But again, the gentleman is trying to determine where she has to position herself. You decide to come and join the queue, and you're not telling me to go.
No, it shows that the guy was there before. If she's breathing down his neck, she's behind him, right?
So who determines the distance?
Listen, I am looking at the circumstance determines the distance. If it's not a packed watcher, please, you're just 3 people there with no other person. No matter how far you are, it's going to be a particular order, okay?
In that sense, it's not a queue.
It's still a queue of 3. In being
but
close,
if it's a longer queue.
In being close, it doesn't mean you will get priority. If it's a longer queue and for want of space, you have to pack into each other like sardines, then you can choose to opt out because maybe you're just too posh to be in a crowded watcher queue. But if there's ample space and this woman still decides to make a body-to-body contact to the extent that she's breathing down your neck, I think you can object to that treatment.
I like the objection. Everybody has a right to seek to enforce or object to somebody breaching their right. But I think that in public spaces, like he says in a watcher queue, probably will be difficult to pin it down to privacy. But it may be courteous to say, please, maybe for A, B, can you go back? Or if you wish, go forward. You know, if you wish, you exercise your right to.
That's if there's enough space to move forward also.
You know, so the same can be said for her. How is there space enough for her to go back as well? We don't have all the facts.
So then it comes back to the issue of how big is the crowd and where is this watcher being sold, right?
For me, like we've said, it depends. It depends on the facts, and there's no straight cutting edge principle that is being used, though we have the reasonable expectation of our privacy. Even with that, the courts find it difficult to define what that is. But I think there's an aspect of the discussion that time will not permit us. The issue of whether privacy extends to properties that belong to a person. So I take a picture of your house or your car. That is another big issue.
So this is a whole new
That's a
conversation
whole
on
new,
its own. But hold your thoughts.
Yes.
We'll go for a quick break, and
Okay.
when we come back, you pick it up from there, and then he can chip in, and then
Right.
we wrap up.
Right.
Don't go away. This is Law Express.
From what I said before the break, does it extend to properties that belong to what? A person. So if you take a picture of my car or a picture of your house, that is another aspect of the issue of what? Privacy. Somebody will say, but your house is in the middle of a public space, it's not hidden. So why can't I take a picture of it? But like I said, that's a whole big issue for another day. So I'll say it depends on the facts, and it's really, yes, you have a right to privacy in the public space, but it is not absolute in nature. It is only guaranteed to a certain extent. That is all I'll say.
In summing up, I think that it's good we're having a conversation around privacy, because if there was ever an age where privacy, where our right to privacy is perhaps zilch, is this time, right? If there was ever a time in history where we're surveilled, we're tailed, there are records of us on the net, where we can be pried, it's this time. So it's good to have that conversation. But I think at the center of it is a balancing act to say that you have a right to privacy, but another person has a right to expression. And in seeking to protect that, the courts or the law is very careful not to also gag somebody in expressing themselves, or gag society from seeking what is in its public good. So I guess the conversation will go on. Ultimately, it's your responsibility. If you feel that you have something of confidence, express, seek to protect that right primarily, and enjoin others to respect your right as is, because it's definitely guaranteed by the Constitution.
Very well. In arriving at the balance between having people's privacy protected as against the public interest, as many layers of several factors that have to be considered. And since it's not one particular situation fit all, the conversation only can go on. This has been Law Express. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the topic, privacy in public places. Viewers, this has been Courage Asabagna and Yao Sumpa. My name is Noella Seydu, and until next time, this was Law Express. Goodbye.